Good morning, everyone, and welcome to chapel. I would like to welcome Intro to Performing Arts class with Mr. Visker and Mrs. Wolfel here in the studio today. Well, I am super excited about today's chapel. It is my very own youth pastor, so get excited. It is Mark Wilkerson. Mark Wilkerson graduated from Wheaton College in 2011 with a ministry degree. He now currently is the high school ministry pastor at Glen Ellen Bible Church, and he lives in Glen Ellen with his wife Ellie and 3 kids, Hadley, Harris, and Ellis. One thing I appreciate most about Mark is his passion for the word and getting students passionate about it too. Please bear with me, and then we can get started. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for the gift that it is that we get to be in person. I pray that we don't take that for granted. I pray for Mark, give him the words to speak, and give us the hearts to hear what he has to say. Bless us today and into the weekend. Amen. Now.
All right, thanks so much, Peyton. As she was saying, Peyton actually met a handful of months ago through email, and no offense to most high school students, but most don't really know how to navigate emails. And Peyton was on her email game. It was amazing. It was super eager to get plugged in, so really, really fun. As she said, I do have 3 little kids. I did grow out a mustache over quarantine to prove I'm old enough to have 3 kids. It just took me 31 years to do it. A few quick shout-outs before we get started. I don't know that anyone in this class I've hung with before. I hope we get to at some point. But I am from Glen Ellen Bible Church where I serve, so anyone from a Reckless crew, you know who you are. Glad to be able to be here today. The sophomore boys in particular from winter camp last year, we got to hang out quite a bit. My late night Warzone squad from this past summer during quarantine, my all-star worship cajon player, my across the street neighbors. Again, you guys all know who you are, so special shout out to you. I do want to shout out one person in particular by name, Logan Ox. He's the one who got me this gig. That's why I'm here today, because he dropped my name, so thank you, Logan. And if you enjoyed this, you can thank Logan for it too. So I am pumped to speak at Wheaton Academy. My connection to Wheaton Academy actually goes deeper than that, though. Back when I graduated, my wife's a year younger than me, so when she graduated, she actually worked here for a year teaching freshman English. And she was absolutely obsessed with this place. She loved working at Wheaton Academy. And on top of that, she actually got to... She's actually teaching an intercession class, so if you're looking to sign up for an intercession class, you should sign up for hers. Her name's Ellie, and she's cooler than I am, so you'd enjoy it. She also coached tennis, and full disclosure, when she was hired, she did not own a tennis racket. So I actually bought her the tennis racket for when she was coaching tennis here, but again, loved the place. She was here long enough, though, that she actually helped me get hired as the freshman baseball coach, so back in 2013, I got to coach freshman baseball here. We moved shortly after that, but I was here just long enough to get some Wheaton Academy swag, which I still rock to this day. So I'm pumped for a lot of reasons to get to speak to you guys this morning. One of my favorite things in the entire world to do is snow ski. And if you maybe growing up in the Midwest don't exactly know what that's like, or maybe you've never heard of it, it's this really fun sport that you can do on what people tend to call, and maybe you've never heard of it, a mountain. Okay, it's these weird geographical locations that like where the earth is like a little bit higher, right, than another part of the earth, and you can go from top to bottom. Hard to imagine. I'm doing my best to paint a visual picture for you. You'll have to just trust me that these rare geographic locations do actually exist in our world. Now, I actually grew up in the Northeast, outside New York City, and then outside Boston, Massachusetts, and so there were lots of these hills and mountains. And so every single weekend, basically, when I was an upperclassman in high school and then even in college, my buddies and I would go skiing on Saturdays. And only an hour and a half away up in New Hampshire, there was this mountain called Cannon Mountain. Now, Cannon was a little bit different than some of the other ones in the area. They didn't when it came to making snow or grooming the trails. So oftentimes, other ski mountains were doing this kind of thing, but they didn't, which meant the cost was cheaper. But whatever snow had fallen, that's kind of what you skied on, which meant for some extremely sketchy skiing at times. But because it didn't groom and it was cheaper, it meant for poor high school and college boys with an irrational pursuit of risk and adventure, Cannon was our mountain. It was the perfect spot for us. Now, one of the major differences skiing out east compared to skiing out in west, Colorado, Utah, if you've gotten a chance to be out there, is there is more than enough snow, but you never really get what's called powder days, right, that you get out in the west, where you get a foot or 2 of snow overnight, and you're skiing in snow up to your waist. It's just really hard to find on the East Coast. So if you wanted fresh powder, you really had to work for it, and we were willing to work for it. Cannon Mountain was actually built, it's really cool, right next to this old mountain, okay? A little bit smaller, but the trails were still there, but it was kind of overgrown. But you could get over there, the old chairlifts were there, they didn't work anymore, but you could just, basically go from the top of the mountain, you could tuck position just like they do in the Olympics, carry your speed as far as you go, and then hike up to get to the top of this other mountain. And once you got over there, the mountain was yours. You could ski wherever you wanted, on whatever trail you wanted, through whatever trees you wanted, and there was no ski patrol to stop you, and you could go wherever you wanted, which seemed, very little consequence, or so we thought. So we after hiking a quarter mile uphill in ski boots, right, we get to the top with some other brave skiers, we click into our skis, and we start down the mountain. Now, we had done these trails before, and no matter what trails we took down, it always kind of funneled us back down to the right. Cannon was down to the right, so it always funnels back down to the right towards a working chairlift at Cannon Mountain. On this particular day, though, it had snowed quite a bit, and so these trails we never got to be on, we go farther and farther onto these trails that usually were untouched, and so looking down the mountain at the base of Cannon was off to the right, and so naturally, as high school boys, we kept going left. No matter when the trail turned, we always chose left because we wanted to go on the stuff no one else had been on. After all, why would they let you go on trails that didn't lead back to a working chairlift? Well, like most things that high school boys do together, it got a bit carried away. I mean, we had finally found it. It's fresh powder up to our waist. It's untouched terrain. It's parts of the mountain that no one had been on all year. I mean, the mountain was ours. This was our dream. And assuming that all trails led to our desired destination, right, the bottom of the mountain, we kept following the trails down to the left, thinking at some point it would dump us back to the right. Well, after a little bit of skiing, we started to feel a little bit nervous, and hey, maybe our gut instinct isn't so right on this. So hey, the next chance we get, let's turn back to the right. Unfortunately, the trail never turned back and to the right. Actually, it came to the bottom of the mountain and slowly flattened out. And we ended up at the bottom of an old dirt road next to a random cabin in the woods with absolutely no idea where we were. And we have a word for that, and the word is lost. We were lost. And we thought to ourselves, why would they let you ski if it didn't get you back to the bottom? And it sure looked like a good path. It was sure fun at the time. What happened? The problem was a gut instinct, a general sense of direction, and an internal compass wasn't enough to keep us on the right path. What we needed was a trail map. What we needed was someone who had skied on that part of the mountain before, who could point us in the right direction to steer us away from the trails that seemed right, but then led us in the wrong direction. See, even though we believed and we hoped that the trails and instincts we were following would lead us to our desired destination, we were sorely mistaken. And the worst part was by the time we found out that it wasn't the case, it was far too late to turn back. Have you ever been lost before? You ever take a wrong turn on a road trip? You ever can't find the store you're looking for at the mall? You ever take a wrong trail while hiking? Maybe perhaps as a freshman you ended up in the wrong classroom or trying to open the wrong locker. See, being lost is a really disorienting feeling. It's this feeling of expecting one outcome, but then realizing after it's too late that you're in a much different place than you planned. And it's in those moments where we begin to ask ourselves, what happened? And how did I get here? The truth is, feeling lost isn't just something we experience when we're driving or hiking or walking the hallways of the school. If we're honest, we feel lost all the time. We find ourselves in unhealthy relationships or toxic friendships that we can't seem to get out of, and we ask ourselves, what happened? And how did I get here? Maybe we develop a bad habit, a destructive attitude, an addictive behavior that we can't seem to stop no matter how hard we try. And so we ask ourselves, what happened? And how did I get here? We say hurtful things to people we love. We cheat and take shortcuts to get ahead. We feel distant and far from God, realizing it's been weeks or months since the last time we spent any real time with Jesus. And in the quietness of our own hearts, we ask ourselves, what happened? And how did I get here? Maybe to drive it closer to home, my guess is during this current season, this COVID season that we're all in, this feeling of lostness has only intensified. And in the middle of COVID and all the political and racial and spiritual tension in our country and communities and families that we face, there's been lots of moments, I know for me and maybe for you, where we've thought to ourselves or we've said and cried out loud, what happened? And how in the world did we get here? Because here's something we all know. No one plans to get lost. None of us are looking for heartache or pain or unhealthy relationships. No one tries to make unwise decisions or wants to develop bad habits or do things they'll regret. But our decisions, they reveal that we're looking for something. That we're looking, I think, for life. That we're looking for a place of pleasure or joy and purpose, significance, belonging. Maybe in one word we could say home. Because to put it simply, when we're lost, we're looking for home. And we hope and believe that by making the decisions we make, we'll end up finding all those things, and then we wake up in the morning. Or our head hits the pillow at night, or we walk the hallways of our school, or we run around on the sports field. And rather than feeling and finding any of those things, what we feel is completely and utterly lost. And after not finding any of the things that we expect, we ask ourselves, what happened? And how did I get here? See, the theme you guys have been looking at all this fall semester has been the theme of hope. And I'm not sure there's any more hopeless feeling in the world than feeling lost. So if we have any chance of finding and feeling hope and hopeful again, we'll have to talk about how lost we currently might be. And so I want to look this morning at a man who was feeling a bit lost. My guess it's a familiar story for you. He too found himself at the end of a string of decisions he believed would bring him to his desired destination in life. But at the end of those decisions, all he's feeling is lost and desperate and hopeless. Now the story is about this man is found in Luke chapter 19. Real quick, Luke, the author of this book that we find in Scripture, was a Greek doctor. And perhaps he was a bit skeptical or doubtful of the stories about Jesus and what he was hearing. And he wanted to make sure, and maybe you felt this too, he wanted to make sure these stories were actually legit. If I'm going to base my life around this has actually got to be real. And so he sits down to look at and evaluate all the stories and all the events and all the dates and all the history that were written down about Jesus up to that point. And he actually becomes so convinced that it all actually happened that he himself decides to write an account of these stories. And he actually writes it to a good friend of his named Theophilus, so that Theophilus can know without a shadow of a doubt that what people said about Jesus was true, was legit. So this is one of the stories written down by Luke, the Greek doctor, the skeptical Greek doctor, about Jesus. So let's get into it. Then Jesus entered and walked through Jericho. There was a man there, his name Zacchaeus, the head taxman and quite rich. He wanted desperately to see Jesus, but the crowd was in his way. He was a short man, and that oftentimes tax collectors ended up pretty wealthy dudes. They could charge whatever they wanted. As long as the Roman government they worked for got their fair share, tax collectors could simply keep the rest. And clearly this must have come naturally to Zacchaeus. He was so successful at collecting taxes that he actually became the head honcho of tax collectors. He was the boss. He was the CEO. He was the chief tax collector, Luke says. Meaning he may not have been respected and loved and admired by the general public, but he was respected and admired and maybe feared by those under him. And I mean, what rich and powerful person doesn't have some people that hate him, right? Haters gonna hate. They're just mad because they're jealous. Maybe. But worst of all, tax collectors were seen as traitors. And let me give you an example so you get what I mean. This is like if you had a friend who spent their entire life, right, their entire life as a diehard White Sox fan, okay? And they had got all the gear, and they grew up hating the Cubs and rooting against them, making fun of how much they lose. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, back in 2016, when the Cubs were on their way to their very first World Series in 108 years, one day you see your friend wearing a Cubs hat. And that friend decides, hey, Cubs aren't that bad after all. I mean, the White Sox aren't even doing that good, and I'll just become a Cubs fan. Not only that, but they start buying the Cubs gear and they start trying to convince their friends and family to throw away their allegiance to the White Sox and become a Cubs fan as well. See, we have a word for that kind of person. The word we use for someone like that is traitor. You've turned your back on your friends and family. You jump ship to another team for your own benefit. Not only that, but it's the rival team. It's the one that you and your family and friends grew up hating. And that's how tax collectors were seen. They had turned their backs on their friends and family, and they started working for a government who had made life miserable for the Jewish people. See, Zacchaeus. He was a sellout, and he became rich and powerful by doing so. See, just like Zacchaeus, and just like us, Zacchaeus had made some decisions in life. He had made some choices about how he would spend his time and the things that he would choose to pursue and how he would treat people and what was most important to him. He believed that those choices would lead him to the life he always wanted. And there's no doubt those choices had earned him lots of money and power and prestige. And yeah, he had alienated some friends and family along the way, but hey, you can't please everyone, right? But oddly enough, even with all those things, Zacchaeus still feels a bit lost and far from home. He had chased wealth and success and power, but it wasn't until after getting his hands on all those things that he realized it wasn't actually what he was looking for. It didn't lead home like he had expected. Zacchaeus did the things he thought would make him happy, but he found just the opposite. And thinking he was heading towards life that he always wanted, but ending up somewhere completely different, he's left asking himself, what happened? And how did I get here? And so just like what anyone does when they're lost, Zacchaeus climbs a tree to get a better view. To figure out where he is, to figure out what went wrong, to maybe gain some perspective on how he got there and to maybe find his way back home. And we got to believe Zacchaeus must have heard about Jesus at some point, a man who was healing sicknesses and feeding thousands and hanging out with tax collectors just like him. And so feeling a bit lost, Zacchaeus decides, hey, I'm gonna check this guy out for myself. And so maybe this morning, maybe you are feeling a bit lost. Maybe you pursued some things in life you were convinced were going to lead to the life you desire, but once you got there, it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. You finally got that guy, that girl, into that relationship you always want to be. You still feel surprisingly alone and unseen. You finally got the grades you were looking for, but you aren't proud of how you got them or what you had to sacrifice in order to do so. You finally had the sexual experience that you thought would feel so right. But now you're not so sure it was the right decision. You finally got the starting spot on the team or the scholarship you were hoping for, the recognition you felt like you deserved, but are realizing it's not all it's cracked up to be. Or maybe the season was canceled because of COVID anyway. And perhaps some of those decisions have left you feeling guilty and shameful. Maybe you're feeling sick and broken and unable to fix your life or stop a destructive habit on your own strength and unsure of where to go next. You're asking yourself, what happened? How did I get here? See, like Zacchaeus, we all climb trees in life to gain some perspective, to figure out where we are and what went wrong and find our way home. And maybe that's why you're paying attention this morning to me. Maybe that's why you go to church. Maybe that's why you go to youth group. Maybe that's why we open up our Bibles or pray to God before falling asleep at night. Maybe that's why you're on social media so much. Or comparing your life to people at school or relying on your strongest desires, your gut instincts to tell you how to do life and point you towards home. But I think that what we're really hoping for when we climb those trees, what we're really hoping for is that someone will notice that we're lost and show us the way home. And as it turns out, that's exactly what Jesus does for Zacchaeus. When Jesus got to the tree, Luke says, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, hurry down. Today is my day to be a guest in your home. Zacchaeus scrambled out of the tree, hardly believing his good luck, delighted to take Jesus home with him. Well, everyone who was watching, who saw the incident, was indignant and grumped. What business does he have getting cozy with this crook? See, but Zacchaeus experienced this moment a little differently than them. It says Zacchaeus just stood there a little stunned, and he stammered apologetically, Master, I give away half my income to the poor, and if I'm caught cheating, I pay 4 times the damages. See, everyone, including Jesus, knew the kind of man Zacchaeus was. Everyone knew he was crooked and ruthless and greedy. Everyone knew he was a sellout. Even Zacchaeus knew that. But what Jesus knew, that no one else was willing to acknowledge, was that Zacchaeus was lost. And what changed Zacchaeus' life was that Jesus looked past those things. He didn't ignore those things. He just looked beyond those things to the man that God had originally created him to be. He saw the life Zacchaeus was longing for. He saw the longing for home that Zacchaeus couldn't seem to fill. And he didn't wait for Zacchaeus to get his act together, to get rid of the stuff that stood in between. He didn't wait for him to say sorry. He didn't wait till he came clean. No, Jesus makes the first move. Jesus, simply by inviting himself over to Zacchaeus' house, communicates to Zacchaeus that he is loved and valuable and worthwhile. Jesus accepted Zacchaeus just as he was, guilty and ashamed and lost and sick with sin. And after encountering that kind of love and acceptance, something changes inside of Zacchaeus. And he ends up giving away the one thing he spent his entire life pursuing, the one thing he thought would bring him ultimate joy, ultimate happiness, ultimate satisfaction, the one thing his life revolved around. He ends up giving it all away for the sake of others. Zacchaeus found home that morning. And I wonder if you might find home this morning. Do you feel lost this morning? Do you feel guilty this morning? Do you feel filled with shame this morning? Do you feel sick or broken or lonely? And because of all that, do you feel hopeless this morning? Well, I've got some good news. This same Jesus extends this same invitation to you. Just like Zacchaeus, he wants to invite himself into your life, into your heart, and he will take you just as you are, right where you are lost, and he promises not to leave you there, but to show you the way home. Let's listen to how Jesus responds to Zacchaeus. Jesus said, "Today is salvation day in this home. Here he is, Zacchaeus, son of Abraham. For the Son of Man," he's talking about himself, Jesus, "for the Son of Man, I came to find and restore the lost." Another version says, "For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." And so if you hear anything that I say this morning, I want it to be this. Jesus came. Jesus came to find lost people and show them the way home. Jesus came to find lost people like you and like me, like your family members, like your friends at school and your teammates and your coaches and your teachers and yes, even your enemies, even those you hate. He came to find lost people and show them the way home. And it doesn't matter how long you've been following Jesus. It doesn't matter if you even are following Jesus. It doesn't matter how often you've been to church. It doesn't matter that you go to a Christian high school. All of us end up in places that are far from home, feeling lost and hopeless, needing someone to show us the way back home. Because just like when I was skiing with my friends, a gut instinct, an internal moral compass, a general sense of direction simply isn't enough. What we need is a trail map. What we need is someone who has done life before, gone on those trails before, who can come back and show us the way to true life. That trail map, that person is Jesus. And I think it's safe to say that given what's happened over the last 7 months, we're all feeling a bit lost and a bit hopeless. Who and what are you turning to point you towards home? What trees are you climbing to gain a better perspective and figure out what went wrong? What trail maps are you using to help you find the life you're looking for? And maybe the bigger question is, are they working? So this week I want to make it really, really simple for you. I want you to spend 5 minutes. 5 minutes, as many days as you remember. I'm not going to put any certain day on it. As many times you remember, 5 minutes. And I want you to tell Jesus all the places in your life that you feel lost and hopeless and confused. I just want you to tell them to him. And at the end of those 5 minutes, however often you do it, I just want you to say to Jesus, "Jesus, show me the way back home. Show me the way back home, Jesus. Show me the way back home." Jesus came to find lost people and show them the way home. Are you willing to follow him there? Let's pray. God, thanks so much for who you are, that you are a God who came to us, who made the first move. You didn't wait. And something about that first move of unconditional love and acceptance changes something inside of our hearts. There's no doubt all of us feel lost and hopeless, whether we claim to be following Jesus or not. All of us need to be pointed towards home. So would you meet us in our lostness this morning? And over this next week, the 5 little minutes that we spend, God, would you show us home? Would you point us towards home, a place of belonging and significance and purpose and pleasure and joy? God, thanks that you have invited us into your home, into your kingdom. Will you give us the courage to follow you there? In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thanks so much for being here this morning. You guys are dismissed.